Discover the heartwarming truth. My son's amazing transformation after choosing family over grief. Mark stood alone in his auto repair shop, the smell of motor oil mingling with the echoes of laughter that used to fill his home. Every wrench he turned felt like an extension of the heavy weight in his chest. 2 years had passed since his wife's heart stopped beating, yet the silence in their house still screamed louder than any roar of an engine. His teenage son Jake, once a bright spark full of dreams and quirks, now carried a shadow, a blanket of grief that wrapped tightly around him. Mark looked at his son every day, hoping to catch a glimpse of the boy he once knew. But Jake remained an enigma, locked away behind a wall he had built after losing his mother. Morning light filtered through the dusty windows, revealing the community that had once surrounded them with warmth. Neighbors delivered coffee to go and offered to help around the shop, furrowing their brows in sympathy as they had organized fundraisers to help keep his father's legacy alive. Yet, with each gesture of kindness, Jake pulled further away, the tug-of-war waging in his heart, drawing him down a dark path. Why do they think they know what's best for us? He muttered, anger flaring like an old engine failing to start. It cut through Mark like shards of glass. He feared he was losing his son as he watched the glimmer of joy dim in Jake's eyes, a parent's worst nightmare. One afternoon, as Mark rummaged through old boxes, he stumbled upon a faded family photo. There he was as a child, innocent, hopeful, with big dreams. The sight hit him hard, dredging up long-buried memories of his own father's disapproval, a life lived under the weight of expectations. Suddenly, he wondered if his struggles were passing into Jake's heart, as if grief were a family heirloom. And then came the stormy night that would change everything. The rain lashed against the windows like the tumult inside their home. As anger erupted, words flew like bullets, marking wounds that would last. "I need to escape from this place," Jake shouted, his voice raw and painful, his betrayal a dagger to Mark's heart. And with that declaration, he stormed out into the torrential downpour. Mark felt all hope draining from his body, a father shattered, left standing in the rain with little but the sound of raindrops pummeling his despair. Before Mark could fully embrace the despair, a knock on the shop door caught his attention. It was Sam, the local veteran with scars both seen and hidden, drawn by the invisible storm that felt louder than anything. Sam filtered through the angst, sharing tales of battles fought, not only against foes but within families, revealing how he too had lost precious time with those he loved. "Remember," he said, "family is worth fighting for." And in that moment, Mark saw a flicker. Was it something stirring in Jake's heart too? With Sam's encouragement, Jake began to open up, peel away the layers of grief. Would he choose to embrace their legacy? Or would he venture into a future unmarked by family ties? Mark held his breath, anxiously awaiting the choice that would reshape their lives forever. As the community rallied with support, Mark's heart was heavy. Could they truly mend the fracture? Or would it eventually tear them apart for good? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weeks unwound like a tattered string, yet within the warmth of connection, love began to swirl around them again. What would emerge from this chaos? Would Mark and Jake's path weave back together in time, or had they crossed a divide too wide to bridge? The future lay uncertain, casting a long shadow waiting to be illuminated by the light of reconciliation, or swallowed in the darkness of loss. The days turned into weeks, and the rainstorm that had swept Jake away lingered in both their hearts. Mark reopened the shop, methodically tending to each vehicle as if restoring them could somehow restore his family too. Oil-stained hands worked tirelessly, but his thoughts were always on how to reach Jake. It was a Friday evening when a breakthrough happened. Jake had come home later than usual, leaving a trail of drenched clothes behind. Mark, weary from the week, glanced up from a stubborn old truck he'd been wrestling with. Without thinking, he asked, "How was practice?" Jake froze. The tension in the room was palpable. A part of Mark winced. He was clinging to normalcy like a lifeline, but normal felt so far away. Silence stretched, wrapping them in an invisible barrier. Finally Jake muttered, "It was okay. He rolled his eyes, but there was no real disdain behind it. Rather, it was an invitation for conversation that Mark couldn't ignore. What do you mean, okay? Mark pressed gently, wiping his hands on a rag as he took a step closer. In that moment, there was a flicker in Jake's hardened exterior. Mark noticed the vulnerability creeping in, and suddenly, it wasn't he just a father trying to connect. It was two human beings standing in a messy room, both battling their storms. The conversation twisted like the pathways of their collective grief, weaving through moments of frustration and understanding. I just feel lost, Jake admitted, the words tumbling out with unexpected ease. Everything feels like it was stripped away. Why does it still hurt so much? Mark's heart ached at the rawness in his son's voice. He knew this wasn't just about losing his wife. It was about finding their way back to each other, about redefining what family meant without her. It's okay to feel lost, son, Mark responded, his voice strained yet steady. I don't have all the answers, but I'm here. We can figure this out together. Jake eyed his father, uncertainty crossing his features. Together? Doesn't that just remind you of who we lost? Maybe. But it can also remind us of what we still have. Mark paused, letting the moment settle between them. We have each other. We're still a family, Jake. The wall between them seemed to fracture as Jake took a deep breath. I just miss her so much. I don't want to forget, but I also don't want to be stuck. Mark stepped closer and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder, feeling the weight of the world pressing down. We won't forget. Honoring her means finding a way to carry on. It means letting joy back into our lives, little by little. Jake hesitated, the gravity of Mark's sincerity sinking in. Is that even possible? There was a hint of hope, a thread of it that twisted through his tone. Think it is. We just need to take it day by day, Mark said softly, his heart swelling as he witnessed the first glimmer of hope in Jake's eyes. Jake laughed lightly, a sound so foreign yet familiar to Mark's ears. You mean like practicing more than just how to drive? Exactly, Mark chuckled, the heaviness lifting just a bit. They both knew it would be a long journey, one not defined by perfection but by progress. The evening rolled on, gradually shifting into a shared space of uncharted possibilities. They shared a few stories about his late mother, some silly moments that filled the room with laughter and warmth. As they made their way to the kitchen for some leftover pizza, Mark felt a warmth in his heart, like the calloused hands of the community were giving them a gentle nudge towards healing. But just as hope began to bloom again, a text dinged on Jake's phone. It was from a group of friends, inviting him out for the first time since his mother passed. Jake looked at it, uncertainty flashing across his face. Are you going to go? Mark asked, almost holding his breath. Jake hesitated, fiddling with the phone, the weight of his decision hanging in the air. Would he step out into the world again or retreat further into shadows? Mark watched, heart racing, knowing this moment could be the turning point they both desperately needed. Maybe, Jake replied slowly, the word hanging between them like a delicate thread ready to snap. The choice was his, but the stakes felt higher than ever. Would they turn the corner towards healing? Or would the pain continue to hold them captive? The next morning brought a soft light filtering through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's half-eaten pizza on the counter. Mark busied himself with a cup of coffee while he watched Jake from the corner of his eye. Jake sat at the table, scrolling through his phone again, his face etched with thought. Mark could feel the tension mounting. About your friends, Mark finally said, trying to break the silence. Have you thought more about it? Jake looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. I don't know. I mean, it's really different now. Different for everyone, Mark replied, setting his coffee down. But that doesn't mean it has to be lonely. Your mom would wanted you to embrace what's out there. Jake shifted in his seat, his fingers still hovering over the screen like they were unsure of their own decision. Yeah, but what if it just reminds me of her? Mark took a deep breath. It might. But think of it this way. Every laugh you have with your friends doesn't mean you love her any less. Could be healing. Is that how you felt? After his voice trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Mark nodded, recalling his own journey through the fog of grief. It was hard. For a while joy felt like a betrayal. But I realized not living meant giving up on the memories we shared. If I wanted to honor her, I had to live. A flicker of understanding flitted across Jake's face. And that would mean I'm moving on? Not moving on, moving forward. Two completely different things. After a pause, Jake finally spoke. I think I want to go. I really do. That's a big step, Mark said, his heart swelling with pride. But one thing first, let us take 3 deep breaths together. Surprised, Jake glanced up, meeting his father's warm gaze. They both inhaled deeply and exhaled, the air in the room feeling lighter after. Mark felt a renewed connection with his son, the weight of grief lifting just a little. I'll text them back, then Jake said slowly, as if tasting the decision. Mark nodded, giving him an encouraging smile. You're brave, Jake. Your mom would be proud. He watched as Jake's gaze turned back to his phone. The anxiety slowly exchanged for determination. This was a moment of transformation, something subtle and yet impactful. It felt like they could stitch back some of the frayed edges of their lives. Minutes later, Jake sent his response. The relief on his face was immediate, like he had shed a heavy coat. Done, he said, his voice lighter. How do you feel? Mark asked, leaning in closer. I don't know yet, but it feels kind of good. Mark grinned, hope sparking in his heart. That's the start of moving forward. Just then there was a knock on the door. They exchanged curious glances. Mark walked over and opened it, revealing a neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, holding a warm pie. Morning, Mark. I brought you both a little something. Jake stepped forward, excitement flickering in his expression as Mrs. Henderson placed the pie on the counter. Thank you, he said, a smile breaking through. You boys need to eat something sweet today. It'll do you good, she said, a knowing look in her eyes. Mark felt a surge of gratitude towards their community, leaning into the warmth of connection. As they shared the pie together, laughing and reminiscing with Mrs. Henderson, Mark's mind raced. What if this was the beginning of piecing their lives back together? But as the initial sense of joy washed over him, his phone buzzed a message from the group Jake had texted. The news inside felt like ice water poured over his joy. Mark's heart raced, leaving him with an uneasy feeling. What did it say? Would this be the turning point they had hoped for? Or would the shadows return once again? As he hesitated, thoughts swirling, he could only wonder how a simple text could unravel all the hope they just built. Mark's fingers hovered over the screen, heart thrumming against his chest. He couldn't help but feel the heavy weight of dread. The laughter that filled the kitchen felt distant, as if he were standing at the edge of something vast, peering into a dark abyss. Just open it, Dad, Jake urged, snapping Mark out of his thoughts. He must have seen the anxiety etched on his father's face. Right, sorry, Mark muttered, forcing a smile as he opened the message. Just reading the first line made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Jake's friends were reaching out, suggesting a meetup, planning a gathering at the park. In other words, a chance to reconnect. Sounds good, right? Mark tried to reassure himself as much as Jake. Sure, I guess. Jake's uncertainty hung in the air like a thick fog. What if they think I'm different? I mean, I am different. What if they just avoid me? Mark grabbed the edge of the counter, his heart heavy for his son. They're your friends, Jake. Trust that they'll be there for you. Easier said than done, Jake mumbled. He picked at the pie crust, a shadow of apprehension crossing his features. Well, let us be honest here, it's not about them. It's about you. What do you want? Mark said, looking directly into Jake's eyes. It was important that Jake understand he had the power here. After a moment of contemplation, Jake sighed. I want to go, but I'm scared. That's completely okay. Fear doesn't mean you can't take a step forward. It just means you're brave enough to keep moving despite it. Mark spoke from a deep place inside, understanding all too well the grips of fear and how paralyzing they could be. He reached out, ruffling Jake's hair. Maybe think of it as a small step, not the whole climb. The two shared a brief laugh, the moment helping to melt away some of the tension. Then after a quiet second, Mark felt the weight of the moment shift. You know, Jake, if you really want to connect with them, maybe you should invite them over for dinner? It could help break the ice. Jake's eyes brightened for a flicker of a second, then retreated back to guardedness. What if they don't want to? Mark leaned against the counter, shrugging lightly. Then they don't. But at least you tried and you won. Regret holding back. Jake looked pensive, clearly mulling it over, and yet the heaviness in the air felt slightly lighter. The sound of their laughter echoed again from across the street, a group of kids playing, their time together filled with joy. "'Kay," Jake finally said, his voice firmer. "I'll invite them. Let us do it. Dinner at our place. Just like old times. Now that's the spirit." Mark beamed, the happiness swelling in him. As they finalized the plan, Jake still seemed swallowed by uncertainty, a thump of doubt stirring in the air around them. Mark's phone buzzed again. A flurry of messages from Jake's friends coming in, bringing a wave of excitement and relief mixed with worry. Mark looked at Jake, whose expression was a mixture of hope and fear again. "You sure this is what you want?" he asked gently. "Yeah," Jake said quietly but with a newfound spark. I think I just needed a little push." And then in the brief silence that followed, Mark felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about a dinner. It was about Jake starting to reclaim his place in the world, moving away from grief into something brighter. But just as that hope blossomed, Mark's phone buzzed once more. He glanced down and the message twisted his stomach. It was from a number he didn't recognize, but it only took a moment to see the implications. "Dad," Jake's voice trailed off. He caught sight of Mark's expression. "What is it?" Mark's heart raced, and he felt that familiar coil of dread locking him back into the shadows. How could a simple text bring such chaos? What did the unknown sender want? And what would it mean for their fragile hopes? Mark's throat tightened. He could feel the fear creeping back in, wrapping itself around his thoughts like a vine. The unexpected message gleamed on the screen, a stark contrast to the warmth of the kitchen. It read, "We need to talk. It's about Jake." Jake's eyes shifted, nervously scanning his father's face. "What does it say?" Mark cleared his throat, unsure how to bridge the gap between dread and the comfort his son desperately needed. It's from someone who knows you," he said, aiming for calm but failing to keep the tremor from his voice. "Who? Is it a friend from school? A teacher?" Jake's brows furrowed, and the joy from earlier began to evaporate. This Mark struggled for the right words. Could be important. "What if it's bad?" Jake whispered. His trembling hands gripped the counter, his knuckles turning white. "What if they find out about my therapy? Or my struggles? I'll just look like a freak again." Mark reached out, placing a gentle hand on Jake's shoulder. "You're not a freak. You're brave and you're doing the best you can. Whatever this is, we'll handle it together." Mark felt a weight settle between them, a shared burden of anxiety. Each heartbeat echoed in the tense silence, feeling both comforting and suffocating. He took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside him. Jake leaned in closer to his dad, searching for reassurance. Can you just read it?" Mark nodded slowly, trying to mask his own anxiety as he opened the message again. It struck him like a lightning bolt, the weight of its implication crashing down on him. "Hey Mark, it's Tanya. I just want to warn you the kids have been talking about Jake. And I think there's some gossip starting to circulate. He's been through so much, and I want to make sure he's okay." Mark's heart sank. The airy laughter from the street now sounded hollow, a reminder of the carefree world Jake wished to belong to. "Jake," he began, struggling with the words. "I think people are starting to notice. What do they think?" Jake's voice trembled, panic flickering in his eyes. "What are they saying? Am I a joke?" Mark was at a loss. He wanted nothing more than to wrap his son in warm comfort, to shield him from judgment and pain. It sounds like he hesitated, feeling the heaviness of the truth pushing against his resolve. "Sounds like they're just worried. Tanya cares about you. It's not all bad." Jake frowned, arms crossing defensively. "But they shouldn't be worried. I'm fine. We're fine. Are we?" Mark's voice was softer now, but the question arose, demanding attention. Jake slumped a bit, the bravado fading. "I want to be fine. I want this dinner to go well." I was finally feeling normal. Hope flickered inside Mark, lighting their conversation. "You're normal, Jake. And you're doing what you need to do. You're reaching out to your friends, taking control. That's what matters. But what if it all falls apart?" Jake groaned, frustration curling his face. "Then we'll pick up the pieces together," Mark promised, the echo of familiarity warming his heart. "Nobody can take away the love we have." Jake looked up, uncertainty still there but something deeper too. A faint blossoming courage. "You think so?" "I know so," Mark said firmly. "Trust me. This dinner is just the first step. We have your back no matter what." The kitchen light flickered above them, illuminating the moment, unveiling shadows they had both been afraid to face. Mark took another deep breath, willing himself to stay present. But just as their momentum began to build, Mark's phone buzzed yet again. A foreboding message arriving without warning. This time it was a group text from Jake's friends, the concern laced with distance. Would they rally around Jake? Or would the whispers they'd heard shatter the fragile connection he was trying to rebuild? Dad, Jake's voice became a whisper again, fear creeping back in. What if they don't want me there? Mark couldn't answer. The silence stretched between them, as heavy as the weight they had fought to lift. Mark's heart raced as he stared at the screen, his mind racing faster than his pulse. The words in the group text scrolled before him, revealing a mix of doubt and concern from Jake's friends. He could almost sense the distance, like a chill entering the warm kitchen air. What does it say, Dad? Jake pressed, anxiety flickering in his eyes. Just they want to know how you're doing, Mark replied, trying to downplay the urgency. His voice barely masked the knot tightening in his stomach. They're worried. They care about you. But what if they only care because something is wrong? Jake's voice trembled, his breath quickening with each word. Mark knew the pit of fear that lay in his son's thoughts. He wanted to reassure Jake, to sweep away the bitterness of judgment. But he also needed to be real. It's okay to be worried. It means they care. That's a big deal. Jake scoffed, bitterness creeping into his tone. Care. Or pity. There's a difference. In that moment, Mark's chest tightened. Jake, listen. People can feel for you without looking down on you. Jake shrugged, the weight of 100 unspoken words hanging in the air between them. Easier said than done. Mark fell silent, searching for the right words to lift the despair settling in his son's heart. He understood why Jake felt this way. In moments like these, vulnerability felt like a curse, and battles fought in silence always left scars. Hey, Mark began, trying to gather courage himself. Do you remember that time when you were upset about not making the soccer team? You were ready to quit, but we worked through it together? A small flicker of surprise crossed Jake's face, a combination of remembrance and lingering sadness. Yeah, but that was different. Was it? Mark challenged gently. You came out on the other side and found your passion for writing. This is just another challenge, buddy. It doesn't define who you are. Jake glanced down, the fight slowly ebbing from his posture. His shoulders relaxed slightly. The mask of bravado was slipping, revealing the boy who wanted to believe in the strength of his father's words. Maybe, but this feels bigger, Jake admitted quietly. What if they're right about me? About my struggles? They're not right if you say so, Mark said, his voice firm but filled with compassion. You're stronger than you think. You've faced hard things before and come out shining. A hint of gratitude shone through Jake's worried eyes. But this is different. What if I show up and what? Mark prompted, channeling his own fears into steady courage. What if you show up and find out they care more than you ever knew? Silence enveloped the kitchen again. But this time it felt different, not heavy with dread but charged with possibility. Mark took a breath, sensing that the conversation was shifting. Jake, finally meeting his dad's steady gaze, seemed to grasp onto that thread of hope. Do you really think they want me there? Mark's heart swelled with pride at the depth of his son's vulnerability. I believe it. We'll go together, okay? Let us face this head on. Can you come with me? I mean, just for a bit? Absolutely, Mark affirmed, unable to hide his smile. We will both step into this unknown together. As they both inhaled the air charged with anticipation, the realization settled in. Before they could linger in the moment of warmth, another notification flashed across Mark's phone. He glanced down, and his smile faltered as he read the new message. This one was from Tanya again, and as he opened it, a chill crept back into the kitchen. The words weighed heavy, hinting at a conversation far more profound than before. Dad? Jake asked softly, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. What is it? Mark hesitated, uncertain of how to share what lay within the digital message before him. Would it bring them closer or tear open a wound neither were ready to face? Everything hinged on the next words he would speak. Would he prepare his son for unexpected news? Or protect him from another round of uncertainty? Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he stood there, phone in hand, staring at Jake's worried face. The notification from Tanya flashed ominously on the screen. We need to talk. There's something important about Jake that can't wait. His pulse quickened. What did she mean by that? What truth was she about to unveil? It's nothing really, he said, but the lie felt heavy on his tongue. Jake raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Mark felt the walls closing in, the warmth of the kitchen fading as anxiety crept back in. Dad, please. What did she say? Jake's voice was firm, yet it quivered slightly, revealing the uncertainty that lay beneath his bravado. Taking a breath, Mark turned the phone towards Jake, allowing him to read the words that now felt like a storm brewing inside him. She just wants to talk more about what's going on, I think, Mark said, bitterness creeping back into his words. Why doesn't she just tell you? Jake's eyes narrowed, suspicion flaring. Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. I don't know, Jake. Maybe she thinks it'll be easier in person? But you're not telling me everything. Jake's voice rose and a crack emerged in his facade. What is she hiding? Mark felt the heat rise in his cheeks. She's not hiding anything. Yes, she is. Jake cut in, emotion pouring out as he backed away, his arms hugging his body. I can't stand this. Just give it to me straight. Mark watched his son retreat, the shadows of his doubt growing and consuming the spark of courage they had just built. Come here, son, he said softly, wanting to bridge the gap between them. Reluctantly, Jake stepped closer, uncertainty flickering across his face. What if it's bad? He murmured, a lump forming in his throat. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, Mark replied, his heart aching for the boy who seemed so lost. Just like always. Jake nodded slowly, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Do you really think they care about me? Mark's resolve fortified. I know they do. They've been asking about you. That's a sign. He paused, gauging Jake's reaction. Let us not let fear dictate what this is about. Let us talk to the people who care, who deserve to hear the truth about how you're feeling. Jake's gaze darted around the kitchen, the weight of Mark's words hanging in the air. What if they see me differently? The truth is powerful, Jake. It shapes us, Mark said, searching for that glimmer of hope to guide his son. It might not change their feelings. It might even strengthen them. You won't know until you take that leap. Jake swallowed hard. Are you sure I should go then? What if it's all just too much? Mark thought about the unpredictability of this life, the way it had thrown curveballs at both of them. We never know what tomorrow holds, but I promise that facing these things together makes it better. It's okay to be scared. It means you're human. After a long moment, Jake finally exhaled, nodding slowly. Okay, but we're doing this together. Always, Mark said, feeling a warmth wash over him, a flicker of determination rekindling. He glanced at his phone again. Another notification chimed. He hesitated, then looked at Jake, grappling with the decision. Could be Tanya again. We should see. Jake's eyes were wide now, anticipation mixing with anxiety. Yeah, Jake whispered, his voice steadying. Let us see what she wants. As Mark took a deep breath and opened the message, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something significant. And just as the words revealed a deeper truth, a new question loomed in the air. Was this the moment that would change everything for them? Mark looked down at his phone, the screen illuminating his face in the dim kitchen light. The message from Tanya felt monumental, like a key unlocking a door they had both been too afraid to push open. He steadied his breath, his fingers trembling slightly as he read the words aloud. Jake, I know you've been through a lot. I just found out something about your mom, and I think you deserve to know. Jake's eyes widened, uncertainty flashing across his features as he slid closer, the tension building between father and son. What does she mean? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Mark swallowed hard, every instinct inside him screaming to protect Jake from whatever revelation lay ahead. I don't know, buddy, but we need to find out together. He felt an overwhelming need to shield Jake from hurt, even if it meant confronting it head-on. Do we have to? What if it makes things worse? Jake's voice trembled, a mix of fear and resentment, a young boy wanting answers from a world that felt chaotic and cruel. Mark lowered his head, the weight of his own emotions almost too much to bear. Sometimes knowing is the only way to make sense of things. Trust me, the truth will help us move forward. It won't always be easy, but it's how we learn. Easier said than done, Jake shot back, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The air buzzed around them, thick with uncharted territory. Yes, it is. But I promise you, Jake, I'll be right here with you. If it hurts, I'll take on the hurt. We do this as a team. Jake stared at him, searching for reassurance. Slowly he nodded, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. Okay, let us go see Tanya. But I want you beside me the whole time. Always, Mark said, meeting his son's gaze with firm conviction. As they stepped out of the kitchen, the air grew colder. The world outside felt daunting and unfamiliar, the silhouettes of trees looming like sentinels guarding long-held secrets. They walked side by side, Mark acutely aware of Jake's nervous tension, each footstep echoing the gravity of the moment. The car ride to Tanya's house was silent, filled with unspoken fears. Mark wished he could tread the road for both of them, to shield Jake from this reality while simultaneously hoping it would bring them closer. Arriving at the doorstep, they lingered for a moment, the wooden door standing between them and the truth. Mark could feel Jake's heartbeat fast and erratic, mirroring his own. Are you ready? Mark's voice was gentle but firm, trying to pierce through the clouds of uncertainty that hung thick in the air. Jake took a deep breath, nodding slowly, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this, Mark said, determination surging within him. They knocked and the sound echoed like a drumbeat, heralding a moment that would change everything. The door swung open, revealing Tanya's concerned expression, her eyes shimmering with unspoken truths. Thank you for coming, she started, her voice thick with emotion. Pause, I need to talk to you both about something you don't know about your mother. Mark felt Jake stiffen beside him, the air around them now charged with an electric tension. The reality of what they were about to learn loomed heavily over them. A release waiting to happen, but at what cost? As critical words hung unsaid, another question began to take shape. Would the revelations bring them together, or would they rip them apart? Tanya stepped aside and motioned for them to enter. Mark felt the warmth of the house settle around them, contrasting sharply with the chill creeping through his veins. He led Jake in, aware of the boy's hesitant steps behind him. The living room was cozy, yet every corner seemed to whisper secrets they weren't ready to hear. Please have a seat, Tanya offered, her voice steady but gentle, as she gestured to the sofa. Mark sat down, pulling Jake close beside him, wishing he could draw strength from the physical connection. Tanya took a deep breath, visibly gathering her thoughts. I know this is probably overwhelming for both of you, she began, her eyes shifting between father and son. But the truth is important. It's about your mother, Jake. She had struggles, and some of those struggles might have affected you in ways you didn't understand. Jake's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? What struggles? He shifted closer to Mark, grasping his father's hand tightly, seeking comfort in the familiar warmth. Mark's heart thudded heavily in his chest. He wanted to scream that they could talk about anything except the past, but he held his tongue. Jake needed to hear this. He needed to understand. Tanya continued, her voice trembling slightly. Your mom struggled with mental health. She was diagnosed with depression a few years ago, and didn't talk about it. I think she tried to shield you both from how she was feeling, thinking it was for the best. Each word felt like a weight, pressing down on the room. Mark could see the gears turning in Jake's mind. But she seemed happy sometimes. Why didn't she just tell me? The innocence in Jake's question struck Mark like a lightning bolt. Sometimes people believe they're protecting the ones they love, even if it hurts them more, Tanya replied softly, her eyes glistening with tears. She loved you both very much more than anything, but it was hard for her to share her pain. Silence fell, thickening the air around them. Mark felt the echo of that silence in his own heart, realizing he had never understood the extent of his wife's struggles. It hurt more than he could articulate. The room, once filled with warmth, suddenly felt frigid with unprocessed sorrow. I didn't know, Jake's voice broke, and Mark's grip tightened around his son. I just wanted her back. I know, buddy, Mark murmured, biting the inside of his cheek to keep emotions at bay. We both did. But we can talk about her now, remember the good things. We can hold on to those. Jake looked up, his eyes wet with unshed tears. What if I can't? You can, and you will, Mark asserted gently. This doesn't change how much she loved you, not even a little. We can learn about her together. We carry her memories with us. As the weight of their shared sorrow began to lift just slightly, Tanya added, I have something for you, Jake. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old, worn journal. Your mom wrote in this. It's filled with her thoughts, experiences, and a lot of love for you. Mark felt Jake's breath hitch. This could be a stepping stone toward healing or another source of hurt. Do you want to see it? Tanya asked, extending the journal toward Jake. Jake hesitated, brow furrowing deeper. The choice weighed on him heavily. But in that moment, as he looked back at his father, Mark saw that tiny flicker of hope, battling through the storm of anxiety within his son. Jake finally nodded, reaching out for the journal. I guess I want to know her, all of her. Mark couldn't help but smile, pride swelling in his chest. They were beginning to navigate this complicated path together. As they leafed through the pages, insights danced along with memories. With every sentence read, Mark sensed that perhaps the truth would build them rather than break them. But then, just as a warmth settled back in the room, another text message from Tanya lit up Mark's phone. He glanced down, a chill running through him at the subject line. There's more you should know. A sense of dread curled in his gut. What else could there be? Mark felt a shiver of anxiety wash over him, a sense of foreboding curling in his stomach as he read the subject line. There's more you should know. The words haunted him, lingering in the air, heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Tanya looked up, seeing Mark's expression and the way Jake's eyes momentarily flickered with fear. It's okay. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, she said, trying to soothe the palpable tension in the room. What else could there be? Jake whispered, the vulnerability creeping back in. He clutched the journal tightly, as if it could shield him from whatever blasted reality they were about to dive into. Mark tried to maintain calmness, but the tightness in his chest told him it was no easy task. We'll read it together, he said, trying to summon strength while knowing they were walking a fine line. No secrets left. We deserve honesty, right? Jake nodded, breath hitching in his throat as Mark opened the message. It felt as if the room closed in around them, the weight of expectation like a wall pushing against their hearts. Mark glanced at Jake, whose gaze was laser-focused on the screen, anticipation simmering with trepidation. With a shaky breath, Mark began to read aloud, letting the words spill forth. Mark, I need you to understand that your wife's struggles were complex. She loved you and Jake deeply, but there were times when she felt like she couldn't reach out for help. There was a lot more than I understood, and it led her to make some choices I'm not proud of. Mark paused, glancing at Jake. The walls seemed to echo in the hush that followed. Jake, it's about making sense of the past, he said quietly, opting to address the turbulent emotions swirling in the air rather than hiding behind them. She wanted to protect you, but there was also this feeling of being trapped. Sometimes people let their darkness swallow them whole. Tanya continued, the apology lacing her tone. She had a plan. It wasn't about not loving you. It was a misguided attempt to shield you from the storm inside her. Jake's face twisted in confusion, basic elements of childhood laboring under the burden of complex realities. Did she mean to leave us? To hurt us like that? Mark's heart broke with every word. No, he rushed, it was never meant to be that way. She needed help, but the pressure built up until it became unbearable. Jake's fingers trembled against the worn pages of the journal, the fight leaving his eyes. So it was my fault? If she'd just told me no, Jake. No one is at fault here. Life can be so heavy. Sometimes we just want to protect the ones we love, even from ourselves. Mark wrapped his arm around Jake's shoulders, ready to catch the avalanche threatening to pour out. Tanya's expression shifted to sympathy. You both need the truth. She always wanted you to remember her fondly, even within her struggles. She poured love into this journal, her heart through every word. Jake leaned against his dad, exhaling a slow, shaky breath. Can we keep reading? His voice was steady despite the storm in his heart. Mark nodded, letting Jake guide them through the pages filled with his mother's thoughts, reflections of love, dreams, moments of pure joy, and candid confessions that highlighted her pain. As they read, the memories regained vibrancy. Warm laughter lightened the heaviness in the air. For the first time since they began this journey, it felt like they were reclaiming a piece of her, the woman who loved them in life and carried their spirits within her even in her darkest hours. With each passing moment, the shadows of the past began to shift, flickering now with warmth rather than despair. Every word was a healing balm as they read through her vulnerabilities and strengths. Jake's chest lifted as glimpses of his mother's laughter filled the words, her dreams echoing in the chapters that spoke of hope despite the gloom. Eventually, Tanya leaned forward. This is just the beginning of opening the door, Jake. There's healing in this journey ahead together as a family. I believe it. Tanya, Mark intoned, holding Jake closer. Together we will remember. Together we will heal. Jake squeezed onto the journal, a spark of resolve igniting within. We'll hold on to her memory. The fragile bravery in his voice filled the room with warmth. All the heaviness didn't disappear, but it was now intermingled with the promise of carrying her spirit onward. As they finished reading, the moment crystallized, far from perfect, but something monumental had shifted, uniting them in their shared journey of healing. The truth wasn't just a burden lifted. It was an invitation to embrace each other and grow stronger from it, hand in hand. Mark felt warmth blossom in his heart, squeezing Jake's shoulder. This is what moving forward looks like. Little by little we'll create new memories, carrying her love with us always. With determination blazing in his son's eyes, Mark knew they'd embrace the path ahead. Not just as individuals but as a family forged in their deepest trials, emerging as something new, a family bound by love, resilience, and hope. And just as hope started to unfurl, a final text materialized on Mark's phone, the screen blinking brightly. A notification, a simple reminder, but this one felt different, brimming with new possibilities. More with the friends? Jake laughed lightly. Mark chuckled, feeling the warmth spread. Their steps back into the light, vibrant and full of life, a circle of healing about to unfold. Together, right? Mark asked, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. Together, Jake affirmed, the shadows of the past fading behind him like a distant whisper as the light turned golden around them. In that moment they realized that while the past held pain, the future held promise, the kind built on love, understanding, and the unwavering bond of family. As they stepped out together, ready for a new chapter, the warmth of hope enveloped them, and they knew that everything awaited them, with their mother's memory lighting the path ahead like stars illuminating the night sky. Now it's time for you to embrace your own journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help shine a light on these inspiring tales. Comment with your reactions and feelings about this. Ending your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, because we all deserve the chance to heal together. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait, not even one more second. Together, let us grow this community of hope and inspiration.